everybody. Thank you for joining us today and participating in this panel. I want you all to feel comfortable jumping in, sharing your experiences if something resonates with you. So first, I'm going to introduce you. So on my screen, Kelly. Kelly is from Michigan. Then Kate, who is from Alaska. And then we have Faiza, who is from Ohio, and Maren from Tennessee. Now, before we start, point out that everybody here has sons who are vaping. This is not indicative of a gender bias in vaping. It's simply the way the panel. Let's talk for a couple of minutes about how you found yourself on this path to use vaping. If you wouldn't mind, include the age of children who are vaping, how long they've been vaping, how you discovered it, and are they still vaping? And I'm going to ask Maren, would you be so kind as to kick things off?
Sure. I am a mom of 4 children, and 2 of my children have an addiction to vaping. We first discovered that my son was vaping when he was about 14 years old. He is now 21 years old. And my daughter was probably a little bit older when we found out that she was vaping. She is now 19.
Thank you, Maren. Kelly, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Thank you. Happy to be here. And at the same time, not happy to be here, but hopefully this will help other parents out there. I am a mother of 2 boys, one who started vaping when he was 14 years old. He is 24 today and is still vaping. He is addicted to nicotine. And his vaping journey gatewayed into marijuana use. So he is also addicted to the THC in marijuana, and is currently trying to rebuild his life after a number of years of some pretty harsh life changes and challenges as a result of his vaping, both nicotine and marijuana. So it started one time when he was 14, and 10 years later, he is still struggling with it.
Thank you, Kelly. Kate?
Hi, I'm Kate, and I'm from Alaska, and I got involved with this when my oldest started to vape. It was over a summer between 8th and 9th grade, and I was doing a ton of laundry that summer, noticing that his clothes smelled real sweet. And I was like, what in the world is this? It was a nice smell, but it was unfamiliar. And I did suspect drugs. So I Googled, what do you do if you think your child's on drugs? And they said, just start looking around, like their room, their backpacks, everything. And so I ransacked his room, and I found like a bunch of devices in his backpack, and I didn't know what they were, but on the side of one of them, it had like, I think it was the company Smoke. And so I looked it up, and it was a vaping company. And at first I thought, oh, well, at least he's vaping, because what I knew about vapes was that a lot of ex-smokers were trying to use it to get off of smoking. So I thought, okay, well, it's not so bad. But then I started really researching it, and it was just like, it was 2019, and that's when these kids were getting really, really sick. So I just went down this vaping hole, and I got more and more scared. So basically I caught it 3 months into the habit, and then I learned all kinds of stuff in like a matter of a day. And then I was like panicking. And so it was just after that, it was this cycle of me confiscating the vapes, taking this kid down to the pediatrician. The pediatrician is telling me, well, you got to wait until he's ready to quit. And I'm like, yeah. So it was just about 3 cycles of that. And then in the end, this kid was actually caught by somebody else. So he was caught. So it wasn't like by some other people besides his mom. So it seemed like that had a little bit more weight to it, and it was taken more seriously. And so as a result of that, it was the seriousness of, you know, catching this child. He's no longer a vapor. So I feel like when I went through it, it was really tough, but I was lucky. I feel very lucky that he's not on it anymore. So I think the habit was about a 2-year, it was a 2-year habit of, you know, me and him trying to figure out what was going on. So.
And we all congratulate you on that. That's a great end. Faiza.
Hi, good evening, everybody, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on this panel. I am mother of 2 boys. My older one turns 18 this winter, so he was exposed to vaping in middle school. I think he was 12 that time, and how I found out was, kind of like how Kate did, found one thing in their room and then ransacked everything and kept finding multiple things throwing away. And then unfortunately, kind of like how Kelly's son did, is he also gateway to THC, I think often. What I notice, maybe he does it a couple of times a month, I hope, but which I kind of feel with the smell and everything, but yep, still struggling, still going. He doesn't think it's an issue. He doesn't think he's addicted to it. He thinks he has it in control. He just takes it when he's stressed, sometimes with school and whatnot, and thinks it's a phase and mom is just worried for no reason and he will grow out of it. Well, I tell him to give me any one example and he fails to give me an example of somebody who got out of the phase. Maybe now he can hear Kate's son's story and let us know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my story.
Yeah, that's an interesting position. I think, Faiza, as you said, he talked about how, he had planned phases in life, and that was just one of them. So I'm curious as to how vaping affected your child. Did you see maybe behavioral changes, physical changes?
I can jump into that. My son, as I said, started vaping. And one other thing I should note is I do drug and alcohol prevention, mental health and wellness support by profession. That is the job here with my local community coalition. And so he grew up hearing these messages, both, from his father and I as parents, as well as just as our family values. So he knew, and going into his teen years, we felt pretty confident. However, I never thought not my kid. And we always had the conversations. He did admit to me many years later that when he was in a situation and was offered a vape by his friend group, who I thought I knew very well, he resisted the first time. He said, "No, my parents have told me this is garbage," I think is the word he used. "It's not good for me. I don't want to do it. They put some pressure on. They don't know what they're talking about." And this friend group was, going down that path. And so he did fall prey to it. And he did try that vape, and it took that one time, probably had a high amount of nicotine in it. And he hid it very well for a while until he couldn't hide it anymore. And it was a laundry situation similar to Kate's when he came to me and said, "What are you doing going through my stuff?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "My pillowcase." And I said, "I'm doing laundry. What's the deal with your pillowcase?" And so then there came the next discussion, highly emotionally charged, that we had when we realized he had been vaping. But prior to that, I had a sense, and I would just urge you to think, if you do think something is off, you're probably right. If you do have a sense that your child may be vaping or doing something else or something else is wrong, you're probably right. Pay attention to that, because I, in all honesty, didn't. And it did end up changing behavior, changing the path that he was on as a solid student, a solid athlete, a close family connection. He began to isolate himself more. He got in trouble at school for being caught with vapes and suspended many times. And that doesn't work. It just makes things worse. So it really did change, you know, his life, his personality, what was important to him. He began to trust his friends more than us. And it changed his life in a number of ways throughout high school, as well as into college. And now as a young adult, he is battling with severe mental health issues as a result of his long-term vaping, nicotine, THC use. He has paranoia, depression, anxiety, stress. He isolates himself because he's just not comfortable in any situation.
Is he, as we hear of so commonly, is he vaping during the day, nicotine, and then THC at night to sleep?
Yes, yes. He's self-medicating the way that he feels now. Whereas he would used to argue with me, it's helping me deal with all of my stress and pressure and anxiety and the things we had going on at home. And believing that the marijuana was helping him in those areas as well. And not believing, the research and the proven facts about the harm, right, to the developing brain and the body, and now the mental illness that he's battling with as well.
So that was like 10 years ago. So that's 2013. And so in 2013, we didn't really have any clue. I don't even think PAVe was formed then.
No, not until 2018.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was looking for resources in my world professionally, but going to doctors, trying to figure this out, because vaping was still very much being marketed as a safe way for adults to quit smoking. But why does it look like it does if it's supposedly marketed to our generation of people as a safe way to quit smoking? So that's just, as we now know, garbage. And,
For so many years, everybody thought vaping was safer. If a kid was vaping, it was much safer. Thank God he's not doing a cigarette. It's okay. Let him vape if he wants to.
It's like
Yeah,
a
I had a
window,
very,
it's like a window of sneakiness. They had this time frame, and then I think was it 2018 or 17 or 19 when these kids started really coming down with these pneumonias and EVALE lungs illnesses. So
19. Right. Yeah. Maren, were you going to say something?
yeah, just that I had a very similar experience because it was about 8 years ago that I first found vape in my son's room. And so I went to our pediatrician and I went to the school administration asking for help. And everybody was, either brushing it off or just saying like, yeah, well, we can't stop them. I can't do anything about it. The school admin pulled out his big gallon Ziploc bag of vapes that he'd collected. And he's like, yeah, I just take them. And that's all they do. And they don't know, they don't have the resources either to prevent them, from coming back. And he even said that there was he had confiscated one, and the parent came and said, well, can I have it back? And got it back from the administrator and gave it back to their child. So I think that there's starting to be more education. My pediatrician now understands and doesn't brush it off anymore. And I think that's why what we're doing with PAVe is so important, because even though people are understanding better, that there still is so much misinformation. People who aren't close to it and aren't involved in it think that they don't see how grave these problems really are. And Kelly, when you were talking about, your son's change in behavior, it's kind of interesting, like, because my two kids kind of split the difference, I guess, because my son was getting awards at school for his achievements. He was on the varsity baseball team, and then just over the course of his sophomore year at school, just everything was gone. He quit the team, his grades tanked, he started skipping school, was doing all the things. And, I don't think that those were all because of vape, but vaping was a piece of that whole change in his behavior and kind of the trajectory of his life. And then, like with my daughter, it was kind of more of the stress and the mental health aspect of it, that she was trying to self-medicate, and and she was dealing with a lot of stress, especially during the COVID years. It was extremely difficult for her. And so she was trying to self-medicate and trying to find some relief. But the vaping, and it was also for her a gateway to marijuana use. And it ended up increasing all of her stress rather than helping her, even though in the moment she felt like that's what she needed. And so, and seeing these things happen to your kids, it's breaking your heart.
I know that my son's journey started, 10 years ago, but I really was looking to the schools and anybody I could to help. And as Maren explained, I think they were just seeing it increase so much that all they could do was, take the vapes and monitor the bathrooms. Fast forward to today, and I think with the help of organizations like PAVe and my local coalition, so much more education is coming out about it. So the schools and the parent community are trying to get out ahead of it. However, the vape companies have already done the damage and gotten their roots in there. But I do encourage parents to go to the schools and to say, what can you do to help me with this? What are you doing as a school community to, to get on top of this? I know some schools have vape detectors. I know that they do close bathrooms because that's where a lot of the activity is. I know in my son's case, he was such a solid varsity and state athlete. They didn't take some of those privileges away from him. And I was looking for that, the consequences. So I encourage people to go to their schools, to go to other parents, to start talking about this, because the sentiment is changing around. It's just normalized to understanding that it's harmful, and we need to get out in front of the change if we want it to happen.
Yeah, you mentioned the schools. I think somebody mentioned their pediatrician, and I was wondering, just in general, did you get support from other parents, from the schools, from your doctors?
So I think I'm going to answer that. This is Kate up in Alaska, and I mean, it feels like a lot of parenting is kind of out here on my own in some ways. Like, we don't have quite the resources. I don't know what they have down there, but it seemed like it was a very lonely experience, because when in 2019, here at the high schools, what they were doing was they were involving the police and sending kids to court for these, if they were over 16. So it went from them doing nothing to them kind of going all the other way. So I went to the school district, and they were actually very, they listened to me and they took note of what I said. They changed their policy as well. And so now they have tobacco people going into the schools. They're getting more proactive about prevention. But yeah, it was a lonely experience. It really was.
Yeah, it was definitely lonely for me too initially, when like tried to look for resources, although I live in Columbus, Ohio. Nothing, no cessation therapy was recognized for any minors, and the schools, like everybody else said, either they were suspending them or punishing them. And yes, when my kids started, I think when I found out it was 2018, and in a couple of years they were all isolated due to COVID. Fast forward next year, it's like this person in my house, I don't even recognize them. Nicotine made them sneaky, they were impulsive, they were angry, and then they were isolated and depressed, and anxiety was there. Therapy, they wouldn't accept any CBT therapy, they wouldn't take any medication. And then I think, like everybody else, they said they started to self-medicate with marijuana, which eventually I feel like affected their cognitive behavior, and then made them so laid back. And it's like, I don't recognize this kid who was a good student, an athlete, a soccer player, and now who's this kid in my house? I don't even know this man, like, growing in front of our eyes and away from us. And at that phase, it's so hard. You turn to your church, you turn to your youth centers, teachers. I think COVID threw a wrench in all the things PAVe and all the other coalitions were trying to do. But also, I think COVID brought to light all the diseases and, lung collapses kids were having because of these things. So right now, I think we are in a better position with resources and things like doctors. Everybody is taking this seriously, even congressmen. So very hopeful that, at least the next generation of kids may not be going through what our kids went through.
I'm glad you brought up congressmen, because I really think it has to come, that's the source. We have to go to the source, and we have to prevent these companies from being able to just get them into the hands of children, because, we've all found it in the laundry. We can take it away, but we can't stop it from coming back.
Oh, now
There
it's
needs
so
to be.
easily accessible online too for $5 to $10. They're purchasing, even there's recipes on how to make flavors online. So, they can order anything and make it on their own and consume right in our households.
Well, I'm wondering, as these things that you're describing, the behavioral changes in particular, how did that change your relationship with your kid?
Definitely strained. Like I said, it's a stranger in my house. He doesn't know me. He tries to always avoid me, and I'm trying to always, it's like cop and thief all the time. There's no trust. We're just trying to rebuild, but I think it's a long way.
I agree with Faiza. It changed the relationship completely. I saw it change who he was. And then it was the trust isn't there. So anytime you just want to try to talk, that's always there between you. It's even though you don't want to talk about vapes all the time. I'm sick of vapes. It's always right there in the middle, but I just want to, have that relationship or watch a movie with you or spend time with you. And it's already been escalated to a point of, well, you already are so disappointed and disapproving, and this is always there. So it's almost like the vape wall that went up and I can't tear it down.
I told my son I'm okay with his vaping, but then they amped up to this THC, and now I'm like, no, I cannot just keep extending my boundaries just to be cordial with you.
Right. I'm going to say, some critics might say that youth vaping is a parenting problem. And I know that gets me going, and I'm just wondering what your response would be to that.
I blame the vape companies completely. I 110 million% blame the vape companies for targeting our children, my son, his friend group, who believed the hype and they made it accessible and easy. As a parent, I know who I am and who I was and the conversations that I had and continue to have. And I'm not giving up that power to them. I'm going to just keep having the discussions with him at 24, at 34, at 44, whatever it is, you know, God willing. But and I want to encourage any parent, because you do feel defeated. You do feel that. You need to continue to believe in what you are and who you are as a parent, and don't let that power go to vapes.
So when I hear representatives from vape companies say, oh, it's a parent problem, what I hear is just the snarkiness. You know, it's sort of like they're hired to do that job. They're paid a lot of money to blame the parents. But honestly, I feel like if you do that, if you mess with somebody's kid, I mean, you better watch yourself. And so honestly, I'm just going to say it. We're coming after the vape companies. We're coming after the FDA. I mean, just buckle up, because we're coming after you.
Yeah, it's the new level of gaslighting that we see. I see, yeah, we started to feel like we are losing as parents, but we are not. We are not going to lose our children. It's our
It's
goal.
like saying if your child gets hurt on the playground or riding their bike down the street and falls, like that's your fault because that happened. You do everything as a parent to keep your child safe, but we're not with them 24/7. And they're able to get these products very easily and hide it very easily. And that's on the vape companies.
Follow the money. They're the ones who are, like you said, Kate, they're getting paid a lot of money to do what they do. We're not getting paid anything to parent our kids. And so that's where the blame needs to be.
Not to mention, it's a pretty tough time for parents today, because there are so many influences, and you have, just social media in and of itself. But the pressures in school, the peer pressures, and I can't remember who said it, but if you're in school, about, I think it was Kate, how many times that your child was, saying no, that, and with these flavors, it becomes a social activity. And so for, I don't care who you are, you're a kid, you say no, somebody say, no, just try it, it's mango. You say no, oh, just try it, it's blueberry, this one's really great. You're having a bad day, likelihood is you're going to try it. Now, is there anything, knowing what you know now, would you offer any advice to others who may have just discovered that their child is vaping?
It'll be all right. Reach out to PAVe, to all of these resources. There isn't a rule book for this, but just know that you love your child and want the best for your child. And that's where this has to come from. It's not going to be something you solve in a one conversation or one interaction. It's something that you both will have to work at, and it requires real listening and understanding. And I would just say, know that there is support and there are resources to help you both.
And I say spread the word, spread awareness, gang up, gather all the other parents, gang up on these companies and get your voices heard.
So I'd say get active with your school, not just your school, but get active with your city, your state, borough, county, because it's just going to take all of us together pulling, saying, we don't like this, don't push this on us, you're ruining things for us. And then also just really love your kid. Remember who the enemy is, and that would be big tobacco.
Okay, thank you so much. It was a really good conversation. I think we could just, keep going. But we'll have to end it here. So thank you. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care.